and welcome each one of you for this session. I am very excited that I'm presenting this session with you because during the course of construction, we are not expected to speak to public about the behind the scenes design work that we do. But since now it's all there in open public domain, I thought it will be wonderful for us to understand some of the processes that went in, especially relating to something called sacred geometry. Yeah. So what is sacred geometry? Well, it is geometric design which is said to have certain higher dimensional, you may call it spiritual, you may call it energy, you may call it by whatever name, but there are certain diagrams or drawings which are said to harness, certain, they can become certain portals through which tattvas and energies can come and transfers different dimensions. So anyway, that I am not so much going into today, but what I want to talk to you about is the very fact that Delhi, it has been the seat of power for ages, right? And if the British ruled for some 200 years with a very small, contingent of army, if they could, rule this entire nation, there must be something in the seat of the power or the design of the seat of the power, which was then called the Viceroy's residence, and the surrounds around it, that must be having something. So I don't know whether you relate it to Vastu or you relate it to ley lines or energy vortices or whatever, but there must be something in it. So let me start my presentation with a very simple, what shall I say? A simple introduction to that part of Delhi, which is really, if you see, there is so much geometry. If you see my cursor now, that's your north and south block. That's the Rashtrapati Bhavan, the existing parliament there. And this is the Rajpath and the India Gate, now Kartavya Path. But you see the geometry. You have the C hexagon there. Then you've got the roads leading to Connaught Place and all these various geometries. Delhi is a very peculiar place. Suppose I want to get from here to, let us say, here, I have to do all kinds of deviations at roundabouts. You never get the feel in which way you're traveling in Delhi. And even today, I tend to get lost. I trust my taxi driver to take me wherever I have to go. But myself, I'm a little lost because there are so many. If I have to travel from the center of this hexagon to this, I'll actually have to travel like this. Then I have to travel like that, or I can take another route equidistant to come there, and then I can come here. So everywhere you have to do some weird kind of things at the roundabouts. Yeah. But the fact is that there is so much geometry here. And if we believe that this geometry has something to do with the way the seat of power has been in Delhi for eons now, then let us try to unravel that. Lutyens, he used to even plant the streets, like Rajpath was full of the jamuns, and then you have the neem trees that were happening, and then you have the sausage trees, the kilia that's happening, the Arjun trees, and so many trees that you see. But those of you who have done Mandala Vatika will already see something very familiar here. You will see something that we call the Metatron's cube. I will come to that. But there is a tremendous amount of intricate geometry that goes on. And if you see here the various angles, the equidistant 60-degree angles and the kind of vistas to all the ancient tombs on one side, Ferozshah Kotla, the Indraprasth Kila, the Juma Masjid. I mean, there is a spatial orientation in Delhi, which is very, very special. So this was the one I was talking to you about. It is a part of sacred geometry. It is derived from the flower or from the tree of life. And if you see this, you can actually spot it in this. Yeah. So let us look at some of the earliest sketches, which comes from the Lutyens library, which is presently in the presidential complex. They have a library there which houses some of his earlier sketches, and you can see very nicely that what he had in mind. He had in mind the North and South Block, which was his offices, and then he had the Rashtrapati Bhavan, the imposing facade of the Rashtrapati Bhavan elevated on the Rasina Hill. You have the old parliament. He had thought of another parliament. Obviously, he sort of mirrored it on this side with another building. He had another circular building there, which he thought would mirror the parliament building. But this entire Rajpath, he had in mind a tremendous amount of geometry, which he conceived through the plantation. Now, this is very important because when you see what has happened today, if you go and see what is there, let's say even in 2020, before we started work there, you went and saw it was something that was pretty chaotic. I mean, you couldn't really find out what was happening in terms of geometry there, because if you see the planting of the jamun trees by Lutyens, they are all in clusters. They are in clusters of twos, but then you've got some isolatory single ones. Then you've got clusters of two, but there is a geometry to this. So let's explore what was happening in that geometry. Now, if I take one of the earliest photos as sort of an aerial photograph, you can see he followed something called a diagonal grid, which is creating diamond-shaped grids. And what is a diamond? A diamond is essentially two triangles stuck on their base together, and that gives you a diamond. And you can see here how beautifully all these diamond sort of grid he had conceived, and he had given ample space between the trees because he wanted sunshine to come through, and he wanted to develop the royal lawns, the imperial lawns, so that anybody coming on this Rajpath, or it was called Kingsway then, and if anybody was coming up this, it was shock and awe. You would see these imposing buildings and these huge, boulevard. And, you would feel so intimidated by the powers that be who are sitting on top of the hill there. Now, if I had to put this in a plan, so on my right-hand side is what we have the India Gate, the C hexagon. And then on my left-hand side, we have the Rajpath. Now, if we look at this geometry, this is what originally Lutyens had conceived for the Rajpath, the Kingsway. And there is a beautiful design which he had embellished. And this forms a part of that sacred geometry. Yeah. So this is what he sort of originally came up with. This is what we see here. But what happens is that over a period of time between then, which was, in 1960s to now, this is the mess that we have. Yeah. So you had something that was there and nobody could even really figure out what really was there, because the original intent of Lutyens, which was so understated, it was so beautiful, it was so clean, it was so beautiful, there was sacred geometry imbibed in it, and he had sort of done everything beautifully. And then we kept planting because we thought maybe there should be more trees. Every time a dignitary came to Delhi, he was asked to plant a tree. So they just kept planting and planting and planting and planting of trees till we had, against Lutyens' 411 trees, we had 4,468 trees in the Central Vista, which is now Kartavya Path. And this is what we got as our palette to come up with a design that would happen over the next 10, 15, 25, 50 years of time. And we really had to put ourselves in the shoes of Lutyens to understand what was happening. So we went back to the original plan of Lutyens and we identified each of the trees. So whatever you see in dark green here were the surviving trees from his original plantation, which we could discover in 2020. And whatever we have as the yellow dots here, those were the plants which either became too old and died, or they were removed for some reason, or they were diseased and they were removed, or whatever. But those trees are non-existent now. We could understand why these trees are not there, because we made an additional road here, which was not there during Lutyens' time. So some of these would have gone for that reason. But our first effort was to find out where is the match with the original design of Lutyens. And then we found out that 97 trees, which are now shown in dark green, these were the missing trees. So we said, okay, the first thing we do is to sort of identify in this chaotic planting, where exactly are the trees that should have been there if we go by Lutyens' design. And then we could actually create using what we call a slivering. So what we did was we took one diamond of Lutyens and we sort of slid it, sliced it, so that it gave a second diamond and then a third diamond. And these three diamonds we started to put together to give some meaning to what was the chaotic plantation there. So in this half portion I'm showing you, this is what we found in the chaotic planting. This is what was left of Lutyens' design. And if we fill that up, we could do something called slivering. It's an architectural process where we sort of shadow an original design to get replicas of it. And we created this. And then we can see here's how this slivering works. And then we said we need to add a little more color because there were only jamun trees then. So we added kosem, we added pilkins, yeah? And we sort of upped the game there. And then by slivering again, you can see how we could eventually arrive at something that in the next 50, 75 or 100 years would become a very meaningful landscape without, of course, touching a single tree. Our intention was not to touch a single tree here, and we went about that. So this was the original location. This was the first slivering, second slivering, and then we actually created the whole of the central vista. So what we said was we will plant and retain this grid eventually, and whatever extra trees are there, when they reach the end of the life cycle, then they will not be replanted. So eventually we ended up with this, which actually added 191 trees. So today, when we are 5th of June, which is the World Environment Day, it gives me a lot of pride to share that in the Central Vista development, there was minimal tree removal. Even the trees that were removed, we ensured either they were invasive species like eucalyptus or things like that, or they were trees that were not in the original grid of Lutyens, and they were transplanted. So they were not like chopped off or anything, they were transplanted. And I'm happy to state that in the NPCL area, they are surviving. You can actually go and see these trees there. Yeah. So not only did we not take away trees from the Central Vista, but we added trees to the Central Vista, which I think is a tribute to the way we worked with commitment. And our consultants led by Bimal Patel of HCP Design and Project Management from Ahmedabad, I think we were extremely sensitive to how we worked around these things. And today, the Central Vista is a gorgeous public space. It's increased the public area by many fold. I mean, earlier you couldn't access many of the areas. We have beautiful vending areas that have come up. We have the underpasses that take away the need to cross the very busy arterial roads there on the Kartavya Path or the Rajpath. And so that was the story of the Central Vista. So I introduced this story of Central Vista just to give you an idea how landscape architects think. How do we make sense of something that is so chaotic? Yeah. And you could get a fair idea of how, if we imbibed the original idea of Lutyens. And Lutyens, he was a Freemason. In those days, all architects of his stature belonged to the Freemason society. And Freemasons understood the importance of sacred geometry. Okay, so I'm not talking about all these conspiracy things and all that, but Freemasons traditionally have known the importance of sacred geometry. And if you take the biggest seats of power, whether it's the DC Capitol Mall or it's the Champs-Elysees or whatever, you will find there is tremendous amount of sacred geometry which the Freemasons have imbibed. So, but Lutyens chose not only to embellish sacred geometry in his design through the buildings and the roads, but also through the planting. So, understanding what he was doing, if we sort of let it multiply by the process of slivering, it's like you have one image, you make a replica and slide it slightly. You make another replica, slide it slightly. So you have the original design, but it is sort of staggered and represented. It's a process called slivering. So if you do those sort of things, you can stay true to the design of the original designer. And you can continue that tradition. Because as you go, we will see that the sacred geometry of the Freemasons is very, very well entrenched in our own sacred geometry, which is based on the Vedic traditions of a mandala. Yeah. So I'll show you that collection. I'm just peeling the layers very, very, very slowly. So this is just to give you an idea of what we did in the Central Vista. But it is more important now to understand a little, let's go a little deeper now. And we go to this area in red, which we call the Vijay Chowk. Now, Vijay Chowk is the area where the beating of the retreat happens. It's that lovely, expansive space. Imagine in 1916 or 1920, they had such huge spaces. Anybody walking up this entire Rajpath, and coming to meet the Viceroy, by the time he reached the Viceroy, he would have been in such awe, of the kind of imposing boulevard that's been created here, that by the time he reached there, half his air would have gone out, right? So that was the intent. That was the intent of the British, to shock and awe. And if you took this area of what we call the Vijay Chowk, what we found in 1920 is really not only just chaotic, it's almost undecipherable. Yeah. Now, this is that area we are talking about. This is the Vijay Chowk area. This is the new old parliament. Here we have the new parliament now, and you've got the north and south blocks here. And these are the beautiful fountains that you have here, and you've got 4 more there. This area is called the Vijay Chowk. And Vijay Chowk, as you can see, there was a certain intent in the design originally that Lutyens sort of thought of. These are the present day pictures. If you see these sort of cone shaped, not cone, but sort of saucer shaped, half dome shaped trees. They are actually Bistendo trees, which have been clipped and clipped and clipped till almost they look like trees. Then you've got the Maulsaris, which are the Mimosaup species. So that's more or less, and you've got these lovely pine trees that are there, which still surviving. So that's what you actually see today. And if you see the planting, now that's the north and south block on top, and towards the bottom, you have the starting of the Rajpath. And then you've got the old parliament. So you can see a bit of the old parliament, the crescent of the old parliament, and then the new parliament comes up here. And so this is the area, and this is what you see today. The red ones are the Maulsaris and the green ones are the Bistendos. And you've got a few of these clipped ficuses, and you've got these gray ones, which are the pine trees. And it looks pretty chaotic, because what sense are you going to make of sacred geometry in this? So this becomes actual detective work, because now what you see on the ground doesn't tell you anything, because Something was planted over a long period of time, 70 years of time, 75 years of time. Things have been removed or replanted, or new things have been planted. So you can't make anything out of this. So how does a designer make sense of something that is so chaotic? So the first thing we do is we try to retrace what Lutyens might have been thinking. And therefore, we start to draw lines. And these lines don't happen by chance. They happen through very serious iterations of plotting. And then you start to see some semblance that there is some connection. Maybe all the trees are not there. Maybe there was a tree here, which we don't see. Maybe there was a tree here that I don't see. Maybe there was a tree here. Maybe there should have been another tree here, just like there is one here. Maybe there should be. You start to sort of imagine, you keep on going into a zone, you try to imagine what was Lutyens trying to do here. Knowing that he was a Freemason, you know that he was not going to do something very random. This is going to be a huge ceremonial space. And in the ceremonial space, he was not going to do something very trivial. He was going to give it a lot of thought. So what was that thought he gave? Now you can see, if I start to sort of bring to life, highlight certain lines, this six-pointed star is the Star of David. In our tradition, we call it the Shatkona. It's also the Siddhi Vinayaka Mandala Vatika. It's a Siddhi Vinayaka Mandala. And the Vinayaka Mandala has got the six-pointed star, which we call the Shatkona. In their tradition, it is called the Star of David. And the Star of David is a very, very important piece in sacred geometry. And we will slowly unravel to see how this moves forward. So just stay with me as I play these slides. Now, what I have done basically is, from here, I've taken out this triangle here. I've taken out this triangle here and this Shatkona here with the trees. So these were planted by Lutyens, all these pink and green ones planted by Lutyens. So I bring this and I move to this page. So you can see the other trees are still there, but they are not relevant to us. They were all planted much later. You don't see them in the original photographs. And you can see here something is happening. But again, what is this here? If I start to look at this further, you can see I can draw some lines in these corners. In the corners, I can draw some lines. So something is happening here, which is very, very, very interesting. And if I go one step further, I can put this particular shape. This shape is a very, very interesting shape. And this shape is called, it actually comes from a symbol in the Freemason dictionary. Among the symbols they have, this is called a chamfered hexagon. If people who know joinery, there is something called a dovetail joint. When three planes of wood come together, you can actually make something that's called a dovetail joint. The chamfered hexagon is based on a dovetail joint. And Lutyens was very, very conversant with this dovetail joint. So we will now sort of analyze this a bit. So you got this dovetail joint here. Very roughly, I have drawn this. Obviously, there is one tree missing here, but otherwise all the other trees seem to be more or less in place. Now, because there is a mirror symmetry here, I just take this one here too. Now, you can see what I've done. I've just mirrored the chamfered hexagon on the other side. And you can see there's a cluster of trees here and there is a cluster of trees here. And if I do this, now we are getting to see something here. Something is happening here because there is a truncated corner of the triangle and there are two places where I can truncate the triangle from. And he has given me 4 of these dovetails. Now it becomes very easy for me because obviously the trees here and the trees here and the trees here are missing. Although you can see there is a bistendu here, there's a bistendu here, there's a bistendu here, one here and one here, which obviously means this configuration existed here also, but we've lost it over time. And if I do this, now you see there is something very, very important that emerges. What you saw when I started, if you see when I started this slide, this was what it was. But this is what it was in 2020, but this is what it was when Lutyens would have planted. And if I start to sort of work this along with the other lines, you see how perfectly aligned they are. They are so beautifully aligned. These chamfered triangles are brilliantly aligned. And if I then finish, and this is what we have proposed now, we have said, if we want to plant this Kartavya Path, then this should be the plantation, not the missing bits and pieces that are there. So one thing is to understand what was happening here, but this is still not giving you the sense of what I am going to try and decipher for you. Because what I am going to try and decipher for you is, what is the role of these chamfered hexagons? Okay, so let us go on. Now I said, now let us take one chamfered hexagon that I took. So if from here, if you see, I've just taken one of these and brought it to this slide. Now, this is actually a symbol that exists. You can see this symbol comes up very, many times in the Freemason repertoire. In the Freemason designs, this chamfered hexagon actually comes, and this is a sort of a 3-dimensional image, but when they actually make the thing in 2D, they sort of chamfer it here, and you get this chamfered hexagon coming, and you can actually sort of extract this from a dovetail joint as well. So they knew that. Now, for us, it's important to know what exactly does this mean, and how does it relate to the new parliament? So these are very intriguing questions which architects will ask, common men should know, people like you should know what is happening here. And what is very interesting is, now suppose I just take the center portion. If I just took these two, that is, instead of this, let me just take away these two, sort of, transparency, fade them out, and concentrate on this. You can see there are actually two interlocking triangles. There is one triangle here, and there is one triangle here. And this is very interesting because now you see these two triangles, if I separate them, you see they were like this, but if I separate them, something very interesting is emerging, because it tells me that this chamfered hexagons, two are there, but a third is implied. So two are there, but a third one is implied, And now you will understand where I am going with this, because when you see the new parliament and relate it to this chamfered hexagon, which is there in a triangle, there is some very deep understanding that will start to come up. Yeah. So, the people who have done Mandala Vatika course, you will all know what I am talking about, right? Because you have been drawing these mandalas. You understand what is the science behind these mandalas, whether we come from the source of quantum physics and cosmology, cutting edge neurosciences, or we come from the Vedic traditions of Nasadiya Sukta and Sankhya Karika. How all this merges in this beautiful tradition and technology of Mandala Vatika. So you are now getting intrigued, because you are now asking the question, where exactly is he going with this? Because we can see it is there, but where exactly is he going with this? Just give me a moment. I need to charge my. Yes, now we are safe. So you will be asking, where exactly is he going? Because Shatkona, you all know, because you've done Siddhi Vinayak Mandala Vatika, and you know the whole theory of the vacuum density, at the Planck length, what is happening, and how much energy is there in that point vacuum in the quantum field, and how many universes can get created from that point vacuum, you know. So you're familiar with all this. Now you must constantly relate, because this is something that's actually there in Delhi. It was conceived a long time ago. It is there. It will continue to be there. So what does it behold for us? What does it behold, you know, for us? And how does sacred geometry start to unveil itself is a very intriguing prospect here. Yeah. So so we are looking at not septagons here. Yeah, we are looking at hexagons. Yeah, at least that is what is there. So somebody on the chat. So we are looking at that. Now let me continue this journey. Yeah. Now let us go to this red area, which again is a diamond. It's actually two triangles which are joined together. And you've got the old parliament here, and this is where the new parliament was. It is a part of the Central Vista development, and we have the new parliament here. So if you see the space itself is a triangle. You can see here actually, there are two. These were all the old barracks and things like that, which were there. And here also there were some barracks and things like that, which all now have been cleared. The new parliament has been constructed here. So this is the space that now we will look at. Yeah, again, full of geometry. Yeah, so you can see in Lathian's vision, he had sort of proposed a space. I don't know whether he thought that could be a cathedral or something like that. But of course, today we know we have made that into our new parliament building, which is a triangle. It's sitting on a triangular plot, and it is a triangular building, and it's got the Lok Sabha, it's got the Rajya Sabha, and it's got the magnificent entry halls and the exhibition spaces and a central courtyard. So the courtyard comes up here, and it's got this lovely banyan tree in it, and all the beautiful plantation and everything. You've seen a lot that has come up there. Now, to explain why the design of a triangle was chosen, I will revert to my mentor, Bimal Patel, and he heads HCP Design. He is the person who is the visionary behind the Central Vista development, of which the Parliament building is a part of. And in one of his lectures, where people kept asking him, why a triangle, why a triangle? He gave this explanation, which I will be sharing with you now.
Well, some people ask me why a triangle, and well, here's one reason why you could have a triangle. I say the plot is triangular, this, that, it doesn't help. Well, you know, it's a sacred geometry, triangles and trinities. You have Sri Yantra here, uses triangles, you have trinities, and in case you're worried, that's Humayun's tomb, so that's also. Evolving a plan for this thing, started with a triangle, we put 3 triangles together, and we put that together, and we got the parliament. So, people sometimes like that as a better explanation. Well,
so that's what he said, because, you know, when you tell them, listen, we had a built-up area that was required for the new parliament. We had to optimize space as much as possible. The plot itself was triangular. We couldn't have built another circle because then we'd be replicating exactly the old parliament, which was very limited in space. So we needed a bigger space. Therefore, we used the best fit, which was to put another triangle inside the triangle. Now, this could be a very simple explanation which should satisfy people. But obviously, people are a lot more intelligent because they kept probing why triangle. And a lot of you would have asked the same question. Why a triangle, and why a triangle? And this again is very, very interesting. So let us now look at, slowly I'm peeling it, layer by layer, I'm peeling so that you can enjoy the depth to which sacred geometry has gone into this area. And really it makes sense. The Mughals ruled there. The British ruled there. Earlier to that, we had so many places that were powerful there. And our Indian democracy, our Indian democracy has existed without a break, and it has gone on from that seat of power. Whether it's Rao Rashtrapati Bhavan, before it was the Viceroy's residence, who cares? The fact of the matter is, it is still the seat of power of the nation. And we have democratized it, and yet there is a power that sustains this particular nation. And in Mandala Vatika, we understand why sacred geometry is so intimately linked with the process of creation, where we do all those, understanding of the wave functions, and we look at all these tattvas, whether it's Shiva tattva or, Ganesha tattva or Durga tattva or any other tattva. We actually look at them as wave functions, as forms of energy, which can be mathematically, depicted. And that mathematics of that wave function is sacred geometry. So Siddhivinayaka has got the Shatkona with the triangle inside, with the triangles inside, interlocking and all that, we are very familiar. Those who have done Mandala Vatika are very familiar with that. But where is it leading to in terms of the new Parliament of India is what you are going to see probably for the first time. So I am very humbled to be able to present this to you. So let us go back to our chamfered hexagons on the three sides of the triangle. Okay, this is the last thing that we saw. Now, if I add one triangle, if I add two triangles, if I add three triangles, what's happening here? Something very interesting, isn't it? Now, if I add this, you can see that this really is the new Parliament building. This is where the new Parliament building is sitting. And exactly what you see here. And where did this come from? This came from Vijay Chowk, right? It came from the design of Vijay Chowk, where Lutyens had imbibed the chamfered hexagon, a messianic symbol. And from there, if we took so there were two there, if we took the implied chamfer and then go and create this, what do we get? We get our new Parliament building sitting there. And this is exactly what you see. So do you understand how this is all tallying up? See, whether as architects and designers, we consciously used Mandala Vatika to design is immaterial. Probably not. But the universe has a plan. Anything that gets developed in that area properly, I'm not talking about those horrid bhavans that we have, all the Rail Bhavan and Shastri Bhavan and all that, miserable structures. Anything that's properly planned, if you plug in to the frequency of Lutyens, understand where he was coming from, then you will continue that sacred geometry. Now, let us get to something even more interesting. Now, when we look at this, we've got the parliament building now, we've got the chamfered triangle, and we've got the parliament. So we have understood that. But if I took this, so where did this come from? These system of triangles were here, right? If I took the system of triangles and I took away these three chamfered hexagons, what do I get? I actually get the mandala of Durga Devi. And Mandala Vatika students would now be jumping with joy because this is something they recognize. What you see here is the Durga Mandala. And what you are seeing in the new parliament is this chamfering of that triangle which is sitting inside the Durga Mandala. Yeah. So it is a very, very, very interesting time for us that knowingly or unknowingly, the universe still designs for India something that is based on a technology that's at least 25,000 years old in our land. The Durga Mandala is there. And if you look at the history of the Masonic traditions, where did they get their sacred geometry from? They obviously took it from something that was there before. And what was there before? It was our Vedic traditions. So the way this sacred geometry traveled from the Indus Valley, the Saraswat Valley, it traveled both down and up, and it went all the way. It went to the cradle of civilization, what they call, it went to Mesopotamia, and all that traveled further. And then you had the pagan traditions, the Wicca, the witches, the witches and the pagan tradition. But actually, nobody credits pagan tradition, because pagans understood ley lines on this planet better than anyone else, except probably Vedic, scholars and the Vedic rishis. Actually, the witches comes from the word Wicca, and Wicca actually is the word for knowledge. It's when the Judo-Christianity came in that they painted these pagans as, a very barbaric, brutal thing. They either burnt them, killed them, or completely obliterated from this planet. But actually, those guys knew a lot. And sacred geometry was one of those things that they knew. And that tradition existed throughout Europe. It existed in South America. It existed in Central America. The Native American Indians knew a lot about energy vortices, ley lines. And you can see, you go to you go to Sedona in Utah, and you will find people talking our language, Mandala Vatika language. They are talking in Sedona, because the understanding of how sacred geometry and the wave functions of tattvas are, you can say, very loosely said, you can call it gods and goddesses, Devi, Devatas, or whatever. But these are frequencies. So how that frequency, when it is taken from a mathematical function, a wave function, that wave function can be represented on a paper as a drawing, and that is sacred geometry. So how that sacred geometry could have actually been there for thousands of years. Then the British brought it back to Delhi, and then it continues in the new parliament. I mean, that is something incredible, because, who would ever think that these things are possible? Yeah. So let us go back now and try to understand, if at all, what the significance of this is, Now, what is the tattva of Durga Devi? Durga Devi is a very interesting tattva, a very interesting wave function. And what it does in our manifest reality, if I have to give you a very short introduction to this, the Durga tattva was actually created when three tattvas, that is one of Shiva, one of Brahma and Vishnu, they all merged together, because there was a demon that was going haywire in the planet, Mahishasura. So he had to be brought under control. So these three, Shiva, Brahma, and Vishnu, which are shown here as Shiva is shown as the blue triangle, the red triangle is the Brahma triangle, and the green one is the Vishnu triangle. When these three come together, embedded in a background triangle, which is that downward pointing Shakti triangle, that is the primordial triangle, then the intersection of these three tattvas create this dark triangle inside, and that is the tattva of Durga Devi. So the Mandala Vatika actually has the whole history. It's a beautiful thing, and we are only seeing it in 3D. When we expand this into in 2D, on paper we are seeing it in 2D. But when we expand this into 3D, 4D, up to 11D, Mandala Vatika students will know what I'm talking about. Then you can see how creation is happening and what Durga Devi has in terms of its role in creation. And the very beautiful secrets are embedded in this mandala, like the Feigenbaum constant. It's also called the chaos constant. So that chaos constant is there, embedded in this mandala of Durga Devi. And how that chaos constant is really the way that Durga Tattva works in the universe. So a lot of, there is a lot of confusion about how exactly the Devi of Durga manifests in the world. Yeah. Now, what you need to understand is she is the queen of shaking things up. They call her the queen of chaos. The Feigenbaum constant, the Feigenbaum constant, you can Google that, Feigenbaum constant, or the chaos constant, it's embedded in this mandala. So what she does is, whenever anything stagnates, if something stagnates, if something is stagnating, then she shakes the whole thing up, and then she leaves that at a higher equilibrium than where it started. This is what Durga Devi does. Say in your own life, if you are stuck in your life, you're not moving forward, you can't move backward, where you are, you're not happy, but you just can't get out of where you are. That is the time you invite the tattva of Durga Devi. By doing a Durga Mandala Vatika Puja, you invite that tattva very simply, and she will come and she will shake things. And in that chaos that results, you go to an equilibrium that is higher than where you were. That's the beauty of Durga Devi. She is an extraordinary tattva, because there are very contradicting aspects. You know, her loose hair is her energy as a free energy. She doesn't like to be domesticated. She represents the raw power of nature, Mother Nature. It is the floods and the volcanoes and everything. The banks must burst, otherwise the fertility of the soil will not get revived. That is who she is. So that is with her untied hair. That's one aspect of Durga Devi. But again, she has got a nose ring. A nose ring is a sign of domestication. So while the society wants her to be domesticated and very, very disciplined, she has got a side of her which nobody can tame. And any man who understands his woman well will know what I'm saying here. Yeah. You must be very, very careful. You know, you try to tighten too much that nose ring, you will have chaos in your hands. Yeah. So that is the nature of Durga Devi. Yeah. So that this Durga Mandala is imbibed in the new parliament, it could be a totally unconscious choice. It just happened like that. But it only goes on to show that the universe is rooting for that design in the new parliament. So what does this behove for the nation? One thing guaranteed, our seat of power will never stagnate. You know, even with the British, it could not stagnate. By the time they started to control everything and rip us of all our riches and everything, they took away everything we had, all the riches we had, and they started to stagnate, independence happened. And after independence, we have seen any government that tends to stagnate it changes. That tattva in the parliament is that. The sacred geometry of this entire Lutyens Delhi is that. It is based, that chamfered hexagon is a very powerful Masonic symbol. And it represents this kind of dynamic change. And this change, what we are calling chaos, is actually a positive term. It is chaos in a very positive way. That is to take you out of stagnation. And we have seen that several parties have tried to stagnate. They can't. The Durga Devi Tattva is there, ready to shake things if stagnation happens. So one thing is that this parliament will make sure that whoever are our governing fathers sitting there, they cannot take things for granted. If they sit on their seats saying that, oh, I am here, I am going to be here forever, and I can, just let things be, and I can just aram say chill, the wave function will start to happen, So this is a kind of, okay, I mean, it's a kind of a very colorful way, a very poetic or storytelling way of describing, but the sacred geometry says that. Our history says that. The Mughals stagnated at some point and they thought they had it all. Nobody, Delhi abhi bahut dur hai, said the ruler. And then see what happened. I mean, he got thrown out. Then somebody said the sun will never set in the British Empire. Chum, gone. Then you had a series of our own governments. So one thing is there. As long as the seat of power stays in Delhi, you can be rest assured there is going to be no stagnation in this nation. And it will, the power that is there, whether it is a monarchy or a democracy, the democracy which is a part of India from the time we got our independence, that will stay integral. But none of the powers that be will be allowed to chill and rest. If they are on their feet doing what they should do for the nation, then Durga Devi is with them. The moment they try to chill, then it will do its dance. Yeah, you'll get the wild side of the Devi, and then you will have, the government out, a new government in. So that's my take on what this whole thing is. So with that, I sort of come to the end of this very brief sort of an introductory presentation to the sacred geometry that we have in the Central Vista. And this is there again, the Durga Mandala, as I have put it here now. And any of you who want to know more about Mandala Vatika can go to this website, mandalavatika.com. You could also register for our courses. It's incredible. It has quantum physics, it's got cosmology, it's got cutting edge neurosciences, it's got the Vedic traditions, it's got all kinds of things. And yet all this put together in a very, very simple way to understand and also invite these tattvas into your manifest reality. So with that, I sort of close. I can see there might be a few questions here. If there are, I can see, okay, the cursor is not visible, so you can't see what you are pointing. Oh, I see, Tanya.
No, it was fine. It was just gone for 5 minutes.
Okay. Good there. So I think with that sort of, if you have any questions, please put it on the chat. I will try and answer. I have another 4 minutes. I always try to start on time, end on time, so that I respect your time. And if you have any questions, please do put, or your feedback will be most welcome. And I think it's a very proud moment for all of us, as Indians. I think it's a very proud moment. It is the grace of my master, Sri Ravi Shankar Ji, that I've had the, occasion and opportunity to be a small part of this team that designed the Central Vista and the new parliament and all the buildings that are coming up. And to be able to share this aspect of the sacred geometry, which is based on a science which is very dear to me, which is Mandala Vatika. Mandala Vatika is the confluence of sacred geometry, plant frequency, and the mantras, the chants. So when these three come together, it is said that portals will open through which the tattvas can be invited into your manifest reality. And of course, that has been the amazing experience of thousands who have done this particular course. So with that, I will sort of wind this down. And Anav Singh is asking, who is this? Let me just, I should get your, yeah, okay. Could you please shed the top was very interesting. A lot of questions. Amazed. Guess will be full of energy. Fantastic session. Looks like septagon, not hexagon. No, it's not. Are you going to put out plants as well in the parliament? Yeah. Plantation is happening. We have very beautiful selection of ancient, culturally very rich palette of trees, neem trees and the amaltas and all those things, the pilkans and all those things. What is the significance of the Puranas, is it? Well, I didn't get that. What is the significance of the jamun tree? Yeah, the jamun tree is an interesting tree. In Ayurveda, it has got tremendous significance. The seed of the jamun, for example, today, powdered seed of the jamun fetches the king's prize when it is exported to Germany, because it is used for controlling diabetes. Like that, our Charakas, in Charaka Shastra, there is wonderful information on the jamun trees. It's one of our heritage trees. Yeah. Curious to know whether a clipped Durga Yantra, at least it seems to be the case to our noise, as in the design of the new parliament, would it have the same effect? Oh yes, absolutely. It would have absolutely the same effect. Yeah, it is not clipped. What we are saying is the mandala of the Durga Devi is very much there. Yeah, it is there. So if you take it in the three-dimensional, the parliament could be at a certain height. The rest of the mandala is below. So when you see from the top, you're seeing what is there encompassed by the new parliament building. But there will be above and below also. So the rest of the mandala is there. Like a Sri Chakra is a 2D. But the Meru, the Mahameru, is a three-dimensional representation. So if you look from the top, you will see the Sri Chakra. But if you take slices at any other level, it looks like it is truncated. It looks like it is truncated or chamfered, but it is not. It is at the three-dimensional, as a three-dimensional form, it is still the entire mandala of Durga Devi. Yeah. Corollary question was in it. Traditional Vastu stalwarts consultant in this design. I don't believe we consulted any Vastu consultants for this particular thing. Triangle and triangle building, Durga Tattva, more fire energy, balancing other energies. Yes. There are lots of things that are happening. Yes, I think means no government permanent will be. Yes, well, a government will last as long as they don't sit on their backsides. That I think is what Durga Devi says. Yeah, history of science pics are not there in the parliament, Bhavan. The history of science. No, actually, I think I don't know exactly what is that Sharda Devi is talking about, but this present parliament building will actually become the Museum of Democracy. The present parliament building is going to be retained as it is. Nothing is going to be broken. Yeah, and it becomes the Museum of Democracy. And I think there is a lot of things. A hidden kavach. No, not hidden kavach. The kavach is at a different layer. That's all I say. Yeah. So can you say the list of trees planted, reasons they have been included? I think I'll do a separate session for that. I think it is very, very interesting. Thank you, Lakshmi, for that nice comment. Thanks for explaining. Could you please compare medicinal plants and indoor plants? Yeah, I think Dhritiman, we'll have to do that in a separate session. This was more on the sacred geometry, which I hope I have been able to share with you in a very simple manner. And thank you one and all for joining me today and making this such a delightful session, both for you and for me. Jai Gurudev. Thank you so much.